Hi everyone, it's Tamara here for another card making tutorial. This time I'm doing a fully Copic coloured scene using the Hyena from the Mega Savannah Pack from Wondering Wabbit. It's an amazing pack which includes 8 animal images, multiple scene builders plus some sentiments, so make sure you check it out. So today I've just set this little hyena behind some grass, just having a laugh at somebody, and I've included one of the sentiments that comes with the pack. So let's get started with some colouring. So when creating this scene on my computer, I put the hyena in first, then pop the grass in front, and then I just put the sentiment up the top. So now we'll get started with our Copic colouring. So I'm just going to put a base layer down of the lightest blue colour, which is B000. As always, I will be having all of the lids on the top left-hand side, which will show the colours that I'm using. And then we'll also have them listed in the description box below for you. So I'm just keeping my pen on the side as I'm doing these kind of long strokes of the sky coming out from the hyena. So it's not too bad around the grass because we will be doing quite a dark color, but I am trying to keep any kind of color going in where it shouldn't do. So now I've got our base layer down. I will get started with our darkest color, which at the very top will be B52. So again, just working on the side of that marker, trying to get a nice smooth layer of color. And then I'll slightly come over that with my B01 to smooth that color out and then bring that color down a little bit further into the sky. So I'm just trying to keep this kind of in fours because I'm going to have 4 blue colors that I'll be using. So I've put a small portion up the top, then work down to the next color and the next and the next, as you can see, as I go in with the second lightest color. Again, just going over that other color to smooth that blend out and using my B00. Just coming down, trying to keep it the level on both sides and just work up, making sure we're getting a nice smooth blend. And now we'll come in with our lightest color again, the B000, to go over that B00 and then blend down to that grass area. So I'm just being a little bit careful around our hyena, but it's sometimes when you're using light colors like that, it's not too bad if you do get a little bit of color in there because you will be able to color over it with the darker color. Now my darkest color had kind of faded out, so I'm going to bring in that B52 again and just kind of reinforcing that color, and then bring in all the other colors again to smooth that out. So the B01 next, just being very careful around his ears, and then I will bring in the B00 just to try and make sure we've got a nice smooth blend between all our colors. Just going over that B01, just making sure it's smooth. And that's our sky done. So let's get started on the grass. So I'm just going to set out with my lightest G marker where my shadows will be. Obviously it'll be quite dark down the bottom, but then also where some of these grass pieces lay over the top of other grass pieces. So just kind of have a look at how this grass lays. I'm just kind of having it a midday kind of day. Now I did realize I missed a couple of spots where some light, some sky would be, so I'm just popping that in with the B000, and now we can go in with our darkest color and put our shadows in. So I'm just using a small amount of this darkest color and just going up with some flicking motion so that we'll be able to get a nice smooth blend when we get our other colors. So just leaning up where those are overhanging, clicking that up, and we've just got this little one on the side. So we'll go in with our next color, which is our G94, to blend that darkest color out. So I've kind of got the shadows going on the left hand side of here, and then the shadows going on the right hand side on the other side, as like the sun is above. Just flicking that color up into our white card space, and then where it goes over the edges here. And then we'll go in with our second lightest color, oh sorry, our lightest color, we've only got a 3 color, which is G82, to blend that out. Now I did realize I missed the G94 down here, so I'm just popping that in, and then we'll go in with the G82 to fill that out. So just working up into that white card space with our highlight color, and just again just going over it to make sure we've got a nice smooth blend between the colors. Now I did want to reinforce our shadows because they did get a little bit lost there, so I'm going to bring in the G99 again. Because we've only got a 3 color combo, I am going back to the beginning. Sometimes if I've got a 4 color, I might only go back to the second darkest color, but with our 3 we definitely want to ensure we've got nice shadows in our grass, so we've got nice contrast of color. So I've got all those darker shadows in, so we'll go in with the G94 to blend them out. And I am using Copic XPress cardstock. I do like it. It does blend really well, and definitely cardstock does help you with your ink blending. You definitely want a Copic friendly cardstock. So now we'll go in with our lightest color, the G82, and blend that out. And going up just into that light space. I am leaving a little bit uncolored so that it is even lighter, and because it's the same color up the top, it blends out really nicely. So now we'll get to coloring his mouth. I'm wanting like a nice kind of shadowed amount, so I'm putting that kind of at the very back of his mouth. So with the W6 and blending that out with the W4, and then to kind of pinky that up, I'm going to use the EO4 to get that nice and blended, so he kind of has like a pinky but still a shadowed mouth where it goes back in. Now I just want to reinforce those shadows, so we're bringing that W6 back in, blend that out with the W4, and we'll do that final pass of our EO4 just to make sure that's blended out nicely. So now he's got a nice kind of pinky but dark mouth, so it goes way back in there. So now I'm going to, for my shadow color, I'm going to use my EO4, blend that out with my R30, but I'm now going to do a bit of tip to tip because it wasn't blending out the best, because there's a little bit of difference between the 4 and the 3.0. So now that blends out really nicely when I did the tip to tip. So that's his tongue done. Now when I actually looked at hyena pictures online to see what they look like, they do have very kind of yellowed teeth. Obviously they're not ones for brushing or flossing, so I'm going to be using some yellow-red markers today to kind of get a nice kind of dirty looking teeth. So we'll reinforce our shadows with the YR23 and then blend that out with the Y31 and our lightest color, the YR30. And now he's got some nice yellowish teeth. Now we'll work on his eyes. I always like to put some shadows in the whites of their eyes, because you do want to kind of create some dimension there. So I always like to use my C markers. So I've grabbed out my C3, blended that out with the C1, and then just leaving still a lot of white space, blend that out with the C00. Now we'll get started with our lightest color to work out where all our shadows will be on this little cutie. So I'm going to be using my E21 as my lightest color, and I'm just kind of flicking up from the nose where he's kind of got his nose kind of scrunched up, and then obviously you can see the kind of fur on his side, so we're trying to flick in from there. And because those spots are going to be darker, I'm not really worried too much if some of that E21 goes onto those. So now we'll go in with our darkest color, which will be our E15, and just working and kind of flicking hair-like motions. I'm just flicking out that marker to create a bit of texture in that fur. So I'm just doing different sizes, so some longer, some shorter, and then obviously where there's going to be shadows, I'm going to put that color in under there, and obviously there will be some shadows thrown by our grass. and also up there, coming up. So then we'll go to our next color, which is our E23, to blend out our E15. Again, just working in those flecking motions. Now I am going to start putting a bit of color in those ears as well. But in our pictures that I looked, it did look like he was a little bit lighter in the ears than what he was on his fur. So that's why I didn't put our darkest color in there. So I'm just working those little flicking motions up into that white card space where our highlight will be. And then we'll bring in our second lightest color, which is our E13, to blend out the E23 and just blend into his little mouth with a little bit of highlight there where we'll put our lightest E21 in. So flicking that down into our highlight, and now we'll bring back that first marker we used. I did get a little bit of ink into his eye, so I just grabbed out my blender 0 pen and just blended that out. I'm just flicking out that color in his ears, filling in all that space. Same with where his highlight will be on his mouth and around his eye, and just flicking out where the fur comes into his face in towards his mouth. And we'll just flick those, just do little flick motions. Again, don't worry about the spots because you will be covering them up with a darker color. Now I wanted to also, in the pictures, they do have quite a dark muzzle, so I brought in some W markers that I'm going to fill in his spots and also around his mouth. So I'm just working with that W6. That was the middle color. The lightest color is the W4, but I will bring in the darkest color once I've kind of worked out exactly where everything will go, which will be the W8 marker. So now I'll bring in that darkest marker, the W8. So we see there will be some thrown from his nose and around his eyes. We'll fill in those little dots on his body, just making sure I've got them all. Then we'll blend out with the W6, just working into that highlight spaces, so there will be a little bit of shadow underneath his lips. And then we'll bring that W4 in. Sorry, I did miss his little dot, so I brought the W6 back in to blend those out. And then I'll grab that W4 and blend around his muzzle. And we're going to have to just soften that where it blends into where his fur is. So I'm going to just flick out that W4 into where that fur will be. And then we'll go over our browns again to get him like looking even more furry. So I thought I'll just pop a little bit of dark color just above where his nose blends in above. So just try and cross-reference images that you can find online to make sure you get, as much of an accurate. Obviously this is a cartoon type version of a hyena, so it doesn't have to be exact, but if you can do a reasonable replica, it really will make it look good. Now I'm just popping our shadows in again down the bottom, again just working in those kind of like little flicking motions, trying to get that fur look to his fur. Now I thought in his ears I might put a little bit of shadowing, so I've grabbed down and only just putting a very little bit of the W8 in there. We'll blend that out with the W6. And again, I'm not putting a huge amount of that color in these ears. And we'll blend that out with our W4 before we go in with our brown markers again to blend that out into his little soft ears. I just thought that made those parts of his ears look a lot softer with that shadowing in. So we'll flick out with our E23 in those ears, and then around his face, just getting closer to that black muzzle area. And also don't forget down the bottom, blending out where that shadow is under his chin, and then flicking up where the shadows fall with our our grass. Now we'll go in with our E13 to flick out that E23, just working into our highlight places and just making sure we get a nice kind of furry look coming from all the directions. So I find it nice to move your kind of picture around so that you get a nice flow where we've got his, you can see that chin fur kind of coming up and flowing. So if you move your image around, it does make it a lot easier to be able to get into that flow. So now we're going with our highlight color just to smooth everything off with the E21. And I forgot to do the lightest color on those spots, so I've just brought in the W4. So this is our coloring done, and I think it turned out so cute. But now I'm trying to work out what color Cardbase to do. So I grabbed out some black, brown, and white, and just kind of putting your image up against it just to work out what's going to suit best. And in the end, I actually popped the brown onto the white, and I thought that worked really good with the color scheme that's actually in him. So then I thought maybe just do a bit of detailing, and this image actually fits perfectly in with this scallop die from Lawn Fawn. So I've run that through the die cutting machine, and you can see that that image just fits in perfectly with that. And the brown kind of really reflects off his fur, but I think the white just makes the whole lot pop. So I'll pop some glue on the back of our image panel, and we'll get that centered in amongst that stitching. So the two stitching lines look really good together, and I think it just fits perfectly. So now I've grabbed out my white cardstock, and I'm just going to cut that down to size. So I will have all the measurements for this card in this description box below. We'll just score down the middle and grab out my Teflon bone folder to give that a nice burnish, and that doesn't leave any residue when you're using a Teflon bone folder. So I'm just making sure that I am putting my image on the right side. So I've actually put a lot of glue on the back, including those little scallop portions, and I'm just going to line this up now and give it a good press down. And I always like to put mine under a book to make sure it's adhered in while it dries before I bring it out. So now that that's dried, this is the finished card for this tutorial. The Savannah pack is so amazing. As I said, it comes with some amazing images, some really fun sentiments, and lots of background builders, so you can actually build up a scene just like this. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.